Hi everyone, welcome to the Bison postgame show presented by Gate City Bank. Jeff Kolpak, Eric Peterson, I'm Logan Campbell. It was a get-right game for the Bison as they beat Western Illinois 52-7. Can we say that winning cures all, Jeff?
Not really, but considering the state of Western Illinois' program, I mean, they can't get to the Ohio fast enough. But I would say it's a step in the right direction. When you put up 625 yards of offense, I don't care who it is, it's a step in the right direction. When you hold teams, you basically shut them out until garbage time. That's a step in the right direction. So, I mean, is the winning cure all? No, but I think I saw enough to where, it's another after last week, another reason to forget about last week.
Well, we saw a little bit of the old school Bison today, 425 rushing yards for NDSU. A big part of that was Rajah Nelson.
Yeah, early in the game, he busted off a 76-yard touchdown run with Owen Johnson down. We may see a little more of Rajah Nelson in the backfield, although Coach Entz, Matt Entz, said he's still an inside wide receiver. Rajah Nelson still says he's a wide receiver, but he gives him a little wrinkle out of the backfield. He has that little bit of burst. He showed that big play ability. To me, what was encouraging for NDSU's running game today, I think you saw some more power runs out of the running back. I think you saw Tamarick Williams run into defenders. A little more determined running, I thought. 3 or 4 yards downfield and would move the pile for about a 7-yard gain. I think you saw some hard running from TK Marshall. I think you saw some hard running from Barika Penu. You saw the burst that Barika Penu has. So those are things that I just wasn't seeing as much in the last few weeks, where running back would hit a hole, maybe run into a tackler, break a tackle, or move the pile. So if you want to look at encouraging things just beyond the sharpness of the offense, I think you started to see a little more of that downhill running game, as Coach Entz refers to it as. 3
rushing touchdowns for TK Marshall, 2 for Barika Penu. What stood out to you about NDSU's offense today, Kolpak?
Pretty sharp. I thought it was pretty sharp. I mean, it dropped a couple, but it says 4 fumbles, but there were some backups that dropped it, late in the game. They didn't lose one. But I look more at the defense. When you give up 49 points to UND, the most since 1890s, to UND, you just needed something different to happen. And I think they did enough to where, I don't know if the mojo's back, but they certainly felt like, and they looked like they had some mojo after the game, and that's all that matters. I mean, we could sit here and talk about, and they talk about all the outside noise, and certainly in this program there's plenty of it. Mm-hmm. And if you're in that locker room, you got to shut him off is what you got to do.
Well, I think there's a couple things that were encouraging. One, I think Western Illinois didn't get over 100 yards till late in the third quarter, early fourth, and by that time NDSU had their second or third stringers. And 2, I think we saw a pass rush early in the game, guys getting after the quarterback. We saw sacks, we saw pressures. Again, I don't think that's something we've seen on a regular.
It's hard to evaluate on this game.
Yeah, I mean, on a regular basis, right. And I think there's something to be said. NDSU went into a game against a team it should be successful against, and they came out right away, and they made a statement. They scored on their first 8 possessions, 7 touchdowns. So they handled business, and I think that's a step in the right direction.
Good teams take care of bad teams.
Well, right. I wanted to ask you about that. The game started a little bit differently with NDSU receiving to start the game. Were you surprised when you saw that?
I was.
Yeah?
I was. I think a lot
I
of
was
people
not, because I actually asked Coach Entz on Monday.
But he figures only the second time, talking about Entz, that he won the toss and took the ball instead of deferring. The first time was his first game in 2019, right? And so I think it was another directive to his team, a little statement, if you will, and you're correct.
Well, TK Marshall said, Coach Entz said we're going to attack today, and I think that's part of it. But there's a couple things going on here. If you want to go overall to this point of the year, I think NDSU's best unit has been their offense. So you get your best unit on the field initially. Maybe you give your defensive time to soak in the atmosphere, figure things out. And then with the new timing rules, they're just analytics where more and more teams are taking the ball first, because second halves go by quicker. You want the lead to go in the second half, not necessarily the ball to start the second half. So that's a shift that's happening more throughout college football than just at NDSU.
NDSU is now 5-0 when they score first. On Monday, we had lots of questions. We wanted to find out answers today. I know it's just Western Illinois, but did we find out any answers for the Bison?
Well, that's a tough question to answer.
I asked the hard questions.
I know, you do ask the hard questions. No, I would say no. I mean, just because of the state of the Leatherneck program, I don't know if you can really get true, accurate measurements against a team like that. Boy, they're bad. It's just a team that's struggling, and you feel bad for them. I really do. But I guess we'll find out maybe more against Murray, and then really when it gets down to it, it's South Dakota State, Southern Illinois, and UNI.
I mean, NDSU's got to handle business against Murray State, but
Yeah.
The meat of this
You
regular
answered that
yeah,
question,
yeah.
right.
The regular season, whether this team is a team that could be a factor in the playoffs, it's going to start with the South Dakota State game and UNI in Southern Illinois. And UNI today is winning at home against UND rather handily. So I think that last 3-game stretch is going to be pretty telling for NDSU.
Well, that's the last meeting for Western and North Dakota State in the Missouri Valley, as Western is leaving to go to the Ohio Valley Conference next season. So NDSU is now 5-2 with a 52-7 win over Western. Let's take a look at some of the scores. Like you just said, it's now the third quarter. UNI is beating North Dakota 24-0. I know in our pregame show we all had UND. South Dakota beat Indiana State 17-3. Youngstown, in a barn burner, beat Illinois State 41-38. Missouri State beat Murray State 28-24. South Dakota State barely getting by Southern Illinois 17-10. Are we surprised by any of these scores?
Well, surprised by UND a little bit. I mean, it's 24 unless they have a late rally here, but
The
we always talk about
hangover's
that
real.
hangover. Yeah.
Bison hangover's real.
I'm surprised a little bit, but it's not just the hangover. I mean, UND has been just working to beat NDSU. They're at home. There's 13,000 fans. Just it's such an emotional toll. Then you go on the road, and UNI has at times explosive offense. And what happened to NDSU last week, I feel like UND is kind of getting a little taste of that down in Cedar Falls. And then as far as SDSU, wins are wins. I mean, a road win in the Missouri Valley, I know coaches say this all the time, if 17-10, whatever, you just win the game and move on, because you're going to have your ups and downs. No matter how good you are, you're not going to steamroll every opponent. And Southern Illinois has been a relatively good team. They've had one blip on the radar when they lost to
FBS
Youngstown
win this
State.
year.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Southern Illinois is a solid team, and we've seen some pretty good NDSU teams go down to Southern Illinois and have a hard time winning. So that doesn't super surprise me. But again, SDSU handled business. They're undefeated. And when you're a good team, you find a way to win those games when you're not at 100%. And then you find ways to blow out other teams, which they've done throughout this season.
Well, like I've been saying, it's any team's week in the Valley. The Bison are now 2-2 in conference play. We'll be right back here in the Fargo Dome next week as NDSU hosts Murray State. For Jeff Kolpak, Eric Peterson, I'm Logan Campbell. Thank you so much for watching the Bison postgame show presented by Gate City Bank.